Hello, beloveds. This is Shakti speaking. From my years of working with thousands of people across the planet, working with their sexuality, I know that there are probably few things on the planet as desirable for people as that deep intimacy that we experience with a special partner, with a beloved. And yet, it seems to be one of the greatest mysteries for most of us how to actually move into the potential of the intimacy that is there between me and a sexual partner. We sense the potential of it because when we come together in sexual union with somebody, it's as though the planets collide inside of us. It's as though the fire that comes from the center of the earth comes up through our bones and just kind of flies through every pore of our skin. It's as though the hurricanes of this whole cosmos starts to move through our breath and through our communion with each other. We sense this like really cosmic opening, this parting of the waves, the movement of breath and juices moving as though the oceans are communing with each other when we come together in sexual union. So because of that almost extreme creative intimacy that's there in sexual partnership, I would say that for most of us, the intimacy of it is so unfamiliar. And we've grown up in a culture that is so averse to intimacy that what we spend much of our time doing in sexual partnership is using strategies to avoid the intimacy. For instance, we go into sexual performance. We start to focus on achieving a certain orgasmic experience or giving our partner that experience. Or we start to go into fantasy. We start to think about that awesome sexual experience that I would have if somebody would only just tie me up and whip me hard enough, then I would get enough of a sexual thrill out of this. Other varieties of fantasy that we go into, even the mundane versions where we start to think about the shopping list or things that we have to do tomorrow, just to avoid the intimacy of the moment in sexual union. And I'm sure that many of you recognize that. And then there's a third strategy that we use to avoid the intimacy, which is that we deny the impact that sexual union has on us. We start to commodify it. We start to convince ourselves that we don't want to be codependent, so we're not going to let ourselves feel too much. Or we start to convince ourselves that sex is just something that is an experience, it's a sensation, and I don't want to connect it with my heart too much because then it's going to become too important to me and it's going to become too painful. And of course, those very reasonings point to the real invitation or the real possibility of what can happen in sexual union. And so if I can today give you 3 very simple pathways to explore in intimacy with a beloved. The first one would be to really allow yourself to cultivate deep stillness and presence in your life. And what I mean by stillness is the quality of presence that we cultivate by sitting on the pillow, by meditating, by having daily practices where we come back to ourselves, where we come back to a deep, loving union with the core of our own being. Because if we don't cultivate that capacity to return to stillness, then our ability to really listen and attune to the other is always going to be compromised by the thousands of voices that are running in our heads and that also keep us so busy during lovemaking. So the first principle, return to stillness, cultivate stillness in your being, and then learn how to bring that into your lovemaking. It is possible to bring a quality of stillness in the opening of the yoni, the vagina, in the penetration of the lingam, the penis, as he enters the yoni. There can be a deep stillness and a profound communion in that stillness that happens between 2 partners. The second principle is allow yourself to open profoundly to sensation in this moment. And what I mean by that is when the beloved touches your skin, even if it's just that stroke over a cheek or a finger running across your arm, allow yourself to really feel that sensation. You know, I was just having a conversation with my beloved today, my fiancé, Aaron, about this, him allowing himself to feel the exquisite delight when I touch his ears, and how something in him has been trained to not fully allow himself to open to that sensation. And I watched him today just open to that, and just the profound communion that happened in himself with himself as he opened to that sensation, and then how that spilled over into our relationship, into his sharing with me, into the way that he was with me during the day today as we were out shopping and doing what we needed to do. So that sexual communion becoming something infused in our interaction during the day. And then the third principle is to allow yourself to also feel everything that arises in your heart. And this is maybe the thing that we're most terrified of, but the greatest potential of our sexual communion with the beloved is that it so deeply opens our hearts. And of course, it opens up the wounds from the past, but it also gives us the opportunity to meet those wounds and to feel them in the sacred container of the love that is there between us. In my experience, our capacity to feel bliss in a sexual partnership is equal to our capacity to feel everything else that arises in the heart. Because as we become willing to feel in the heart, so our hearts will become more open, and our sexual union will run through our hearts, which is where it's meant to be running through. So if this has piqued your interest, and if you're one of those brave warriors who really want to take on the profound potential in sexual communion, I invite you to have a look on my website, shaktimalan.com. On the events page, I will be teaching with my partner in London this September, a couples workshop, and also a workshop where we're going into the subtle sexual body. So have a look on my website, shaktimalan.com, and I look forward to supporting you with my partner in person on this retreat. Thank you.